Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. ReadswithRosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educator spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. Come rock with me and get down to this new jam. Reaching out to my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out. Tala Falava and welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. I am really excited to introduce today's guest. She is a technical advisor on ocean issues for Pacific Missions in New York. She is part of the inaugural cohort of fellows for Nippon Foundation, University of Edinburgh's Ocean Voices program. She is a Tamaitai Samoa. She is an avid reader and a Spice Girl stan. It's an honor to welcome to the show, Gemma Nelson. How are you, sis? Malo Soifua. Good to see you.
Hi. Oh, it's been so long, but it's really nice to be here. Thank you so much, Rosa, for that very kind introduction. I'm excited. Never done this before, but let's go.
Thank you for coming through today. Before we begin, I'd like to give an opportunity just to, shout out your villages, just a brief introduction.
Thank you so much. Talo Falava, everyone. Talo Rosa. I'm Gemma. I'm from Samoa. I hail from the villages of Lano, Salavalu, Lewa, and Sauese. I grew up in Samoa, worked in Samoa my whole life until very recently, 2019. I moved away in search of better opportunities, and I currently find myself in New York doing, as you said, providing technical advice to the Pacific Small Island Developing States missions here in New York. And yep.
I have so many questions about New York, but we'll get there. We will get there soon. We're going to touch upon that. So I guess where we begin is, you come from a huge family. You were raised your entire life in Samoa. Tell us what that was like.
My memories growing up, some of the most cherished moments of my life, right? And I think it's like that for everyone, but I think particularly so for me. I grew up in Valhalla on a family homestead with all of my cousins, my mom's siblings, all of their kids. We grew up in quite a big community. So we formed very strong bonds early on. We often joke in my family that a lot of us don't have friends who we're not related to because we have so many cousins who are like our best friends, and we're kind of like a small society unto ourselves. But having said that, moving away from that family when I went to university in Vanuatu, so the University of the South Pacific, the School of Law is based in Vanuatu, and it's a 4-year program. So when I left in 2009. In 2009, when I started my law degree, moving out of that very tight-knit society, that very strong family support system, moving out of that was very new. I felt super weird. I didn't have my same support systems. And so while it was also challenging, it also gave me a really important opportunity to grow as a person. So to find out who I was outside of this family system, outside of this this little society that was based in Valhalla. And the friends that I made in law school, still my close friends to this very day. And there's in Palangi movies, there's always that coming of age journey, so much teen angst. And I'm like, as foreign as a concept as it is, to compare our lives to those movies, I think it's still applicable in different ways, when we put ourselves outside of our traditional or the groups that we've grown up in, the groups that we're super used to. I think a lot of us surprise ourselves with how, all the different things that we become, good things, I think. Mm-hmm.
But, being so, like you said, besties, those really strong friendships and relationships with all your cousins. What are some memorable moments? living in that environment with such, just with so much love and ainga around you? What are some memorable moments, childhood moments?
Honestly, I only think about this right now because my cousins have just gone home, so I've been watching their social media stories. It's kaele in the rain.
Oh,
It's bathing in the rain, man. It's crazy, but like, as we would wait for the day when it would just like pour down and be like, Mom, can I go? Like, and you would just like run around in the rain with your cousins and like,
mm,
so we grew up on like a piece of land. We had so my grandparents, they grew lemons and
mm.
oranges to support their families, like our big family, and we had a big lawn, and we would just like sit on the mukia and then just like go sliding, and I'm like, me with my current like joint issues would probably never, but me as a young child just go flying off. I'm like, yeah, like it's small weird moments like that I miss and like cherish forever, right?
Mm,
um but also, yes, so we my grandmother and my grandfather, they grew lemons, so we would pick lemons to supply to like the local hotels, the local shops.
mm,
So that was like our job every day after school. After school, we would get off school, you go home, you change out of your uniform. um, they would make us say the rosary, and then you go with your big bucket of like the big bailo that they have at home, and you had
mm.
to fill up a bucket of lemons, and then you had to bring it up, and some like whoever auntie was in charge would like clean them and bag them and then take them to town. And yeah, that was how we supported ourselves as a family for many years.
Mm.
So I
And
still have
then,
very fond of that.
I
Sorry.
mean, yeah, it sounds, sorry, sis, to interrupt. No, you speak with so much joy in your voice when you're sharing these memories. Um, did you enjoy school? You know, were you an avid student?
So I will say that I did enjoy school, because I sucked at sports.
Oh, because I was going to say, did you play sports? No.
No, she was not born with that talent. But yeah, so I really enjoyed school. Right, school was a interesting place for me because I excelled at it, and so as any child, any person, like you want to do what you're good at all the time. So I never, I guess when I was very young, like early primary school, I didn't think that school was really for me until I started getting like awards, like most improved. It's the first award you always get when you're a CAFAL student. You get the most improved, and then I started placing in subjects, and I mean, it was new and unexpected, but I liked the recognition, right? And so it did open up a different, I guess, side of my life, which was very school oriented, very focused on like achieving in those areas, which is why for like on and of course someone like life is not easy, right? Like it's expensive. You have a really big family to support. So for me, I knew that the only way forward was definitely good school, good job, and good pay.
Mm.
So those are all those are the main driving forces for me being good in school. I did also enjoy school because it gave me access to books.
Oi.
Yeah, so I was definitely an avid reader. I read everything. I don't like anything. I would just read it. Like
Mm,
I remember when I was quite young, I would read the newspaper like cover to cover. Just I didn't really understand it, but it was just something to read, right? I
mm.
quickly also maxed out of the age appropriate books that they had at my house, which means that by the time I think I was maybe I think I was like 12, and I was starting to read like the fantasy novels. So when I was growing up, there was a author, Stephen Donaldson. He was like super trendy at that time, and so how we got books in my family was like whenever my aunties who were living overseas, my uncles and my aunties were living overseas, whenever they would come home, they would just buy books and then like bring it home, right? So we mostly got whatever was trendy, and so there was like a big set of books like in at that time it would have been the early 2000s. There were like weird sci-fi novels, and And I loved it. I loved it so much, and I think that's why I'm a sci-fi nerd to this day.
But do you have any favorite books from your childhood, like that one go to that you read over and over?
um, yes, and it's it's so childish, but it's a weird story. It's called The Pokey Little Puppy. It's one of those like golden books. It's literally like it's a child story, but it was just so cute to me. It's about this little puppy who's very naughty, goes and digs under the fence and like runs away from his siblings and his mom, and then he comes home at the end, and his siblings always get in trouble because his mom thinks that Dave dug the hole under the fence, and then there's like at the end of the story, like he learns all of his lessons and he covers up the hole, and his mom sees it and she's like so impressed with him. She gives him strawberry shortcake. It is ridiculous how childish that story is, but
Oh,
warm fuzzy feelings, right? Like that's what I'm about.
I love it. I love the strawberry shortcake element of that story. That right there. And so you mentioned you're now a sci-fi nerd. Are there any other genres that you're into when it comes to reading?
Honestly, it's just like sci-fi. I used to be really into reading it, but it got quite difficult for me to read it the older I got. I don't know, for some reason it did. Right now I'm super into fantasy. I'm reading the Throne of Glass
Oh,
series by
yes.
Sarah J.
The
Maas.
gas.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I think I'm on like the third book. I very recently invested in a Kindle, and so I
Yes,
don't need like a physical library in a New York
yes.
apartment. There's no space for a physical library.
Well, you know what you can do is download the Libby app, and you should be able to connect to the libraries in New York. Seriously, sis, for free. You can actually, you don't need a physical library card. You can actually create an library card, and
Library
it
card?
gives
Yep.
you a barcode and everything. So you should be able to connect to the libraries there. It's honestly like I connect to the Auckland Library, and I mean, I buy books for my Kindle, for my yeah, because I read on my phone, but I also use Libby app to access more just other books that I don't want to buy, but I'm curious about. The only thing with the Auckland Library that I'm kind of always disappointed about is just they don't have a lot of Pacifica books kind of thing. It's kind
Yeah.
of really annoying, and they always send out surveys, and I'm like, more Pacific Island writers, please.
While we're on like New York library, so New York has like a really good public library system,
Mm,
and you register for free. It's an easy way if you're a resident in New York, if or even if you're visiting New York, it's a really easy way you can register for a library card, and it gets you into so many other public spaces. So if you are if you're a member of the New York Library, which is free, you
mm.
can also get into the Met for free. Yeah.
I
So
hope you're utilizing your library card, sis.
you come visit me, I go like whenever I have
Oy.
friends or family over, I'm like, here, this is what we do. We
Oh
all go
my
into the Met Museum
gosh.
for free. Yeah. I mean, it's a voluntary contribution, right? So you can
Mm.
donate, like you can just pick your own entry fee. So usually I just give like $1 for each of us who are going, because the library is not going to miss out on my $20. The library has better
Yeah.
sponsors than me.
That's so cool. Right, I'm
Yeah.
coming to New York.
Mhm.
Like, I'm
Whenever
so
you're ready.
I'm too scared. I'm Fifi Valley to step foot on US soil.
That's a real thing. That is a real thing.
Oh man. So when we moving to Vanuatu, as you mentioned, for schooling, were you the first out of your family to be able to go on a scholarship to do such studies, or have you had role models from older cousins and things that before you that you kind of were like, when I get to that age, I want to do something like that?
So interestingly enough, I have older, like not in my mom's generation. So I have
Mm,
uncles and aunties who'd gone on to higher education, but they'd
mm,
gone on at like so early. Like I don't think I was even born at that point.
mm,
Like they'd all completed their university degrees in the 80s,
mm,
right? So I'll be honest, it was never really like school was important to me because I was good at it. But I also had a very strong idea that good schools, good grades would get me into good schools, would get me into a good job, which would enable me to support my family in the way that, like, in a sustainable and effective way. I'd never thought about really just being someone who I never really thought about being the first in my generation to get that far. And it's funny that we have this conversation because, like, some of my cousins have come up to me after that and they're like, yeah, you were the first one to do that. And it was really important for us to see you do that. And now that's why we want to do that. And I was like, really?
That's so cool.
That's
so cool.
It was useful for you. But it was
really
it's just like it's a weird thing, right? I think maybe a lot of us as well. I understand, like, in island families, there's definitely a tendency to put pressure on someone to lead. Like, I think maybe I felt that pressure in other ways. Like, I felt the pressure to be like a good Samoan girl, like no ka'a, no, that type of thing. Don't answer back. So maybe I felt pressures in those ways, but I never really felt the pressure to, like, be really good at school because other people are looking at you, type of thing. And so I think I'm very grateful to my family for not putting me under that pressure, because I think it wouldn't have resulted in the same relationship with school that I have. I just liked it because I was good at it, right? Yeah.
What don't people know about Vanuatu?
Oh, so much. Vanuatu is amazing. Vanuatu is like an absolutely gorgeous place. Also, Vanuatu has the best beef in the world.
Hey, really?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Of course, I was a broke university student, so I wasn't eating the best beef in the world. But I mean, Vanuatu is like it's a major. I don't think it gets a lot of airtime, and I think this is a conversation that we have on social media a lot, which is that Samoans, Fijians, Tongans, like, we take up a lot of space, and I think even visibly, like, our islands take up a lot of the attention, the media attention on the Pacific. But Vanuatu is definitely stepping into that spotlight, especially just a couple of days ago. I have to plug this. Like, Vanuatu led an initiative to seek an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on climate change. And that's never been done. It's never been done successfully. And Vanuatu led this charge very strongly. It came from students from USP Law School, where I went to school. They presented a letter to the Vanuatu government. They were like, I think this is something that you guys should look into. You should get the support that you need to get the United Nations to request this advisory opinion, because that's the only way it happens. The UN as a body has to agree to ask the International Court of Justice for an advisory opinion on anything, but in particular an advisory opinion on climate change, especially at a time when a lot of us are suffering, when developed countries, when the global north is not doing enough to stop global warming or to stop emissions. It kind of feels like a super confrontational thing, but Vanuatu did so much work to make sure that everybody at the UN, all the different countries, could really see the value of this movement and see how it would contribute to, as a planet, that we need to stop, that we need to preserve the planet. So as a global community, we all came together to support Vanuatu in this initiative. So have to plug that for Vanuatu, because they did so much work on it. And like the Pacific youth, the Pacific students partnered with a lot of similar groups in other countries to kind of have that, not only just that pressure within government, but that pressure outside of governments to really to make sure that this was successful. And we passed that on Wednesday.
Congrats. I think I could see it was circulating on Twitter. So that's when you were talking about it, I was like, yes, I did see that. Yeah. Man, that's huge.
Definitely a big moment. Palau had actually tried to do something similar, I think, in 2018, 2019, but it was killed. It was a very direct pressure from other governments. It was like, don't do this. not going to support you if you keep pushing. So for Vanuatu to bring the same question and to succeed with, of course, the very strong support of all the Pacific countries and like many other countries, it's a big win for not just for Vanuatu, but for the Pacific. It's a big win for us.
I am really curious about Pacific Islanders in this space. Are there many of you? Tell us about that, sis, because I don't know that people know much about this. For me personally, I see a lot of what you put out. Other people that I follow on Twitter, that's how I find out about this stuff. But then I think, do other people know? Are they aware of all this hard work that is being done? Tell us, sis.
I mean, definitely it's maybe it's two things, right? It's that a lot of people don't understand the UN in general. Like we know what it is. We know it's like a group of countries that make decisions. But I think it's for myself, before I started getting involved in this space, I was very unsure about what the UN was, how it works, like what exactly, like what its value is. Excuse me. What's its value to the world that we live in? Because like I think maybe the big thing is that every year climate change is worsening. There's still wars happening, and it's like, but we're supposed to have this thing called the UN, the United Nations, that's supposed to solve that, maybe. So it's like, if it's not doing it, maybe it doesn't work. So I think there's that first layer of everyone generally just the UN is a weird thing. It's like this weird thing that exists in the world that none of us really understand. And then on that second layer that you're talking about, the Pacific involvement, there are some major Pacific players that have come through the UN, right? So just to give you a few examples, we have this thing called the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and it was such an important treaty to be negotiated in the 60s to the 80s, that one of the main things that's important about it is that it establishes what we call maritime boundaries. So every country, if you have a coast, if you have something that touches the sea, you have certain lengths away from your shore. So you've got like 12 nautical miles out, 22 nautical miles out. They're divided into zones, and depending on which zone, your country can do different things. So 12 nautical miles from your coast, that's your territorial sea, that is your sea. That is you as a country. You do whatever you want in there. No one can come in there without your permission. Like, that's your sea. And then like further out is called the contiguous zone, and then you have the exclusive economic zone. That's an important area for us as Pacific Islands because of fisheries. Right. So a lot of our money, a lot of the income for our economies, it comes from fishing activities. So to have set up those areas of sea, and it gives a way for us to, achieve sustainable development. It gives a way for us to feed our economies. Having those things established under that convention they were really helpful. But the most important thing about that in terms of Pacific Island involvement is that a Fijian man named Satyanandan, he was the chair of the conference when it was agreed.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
wow.
we've been doing this for some time, right? Like we've been early, like at very key moments of negotiations, Pacific Islanders are usually there. So Satyanandan is someone that's like super important to the Pacific in terms of oceans. And then we have Peter Thompson. So Peter Thompson is currently the UN Secretary General Special Envoy for Oceans. He's Fijian. He was previously the president of the General Assembly. He was also president of he was chair of the group of 77 countries, which it's not 77 countries. There's like way many more. It just,
right.
It's all of the developing countries in the UN. We group ourselves together in political blocks. So one of the blocks that we participate in is a group of 77 plus China. For the Pacific, we participate in a few blocks. So the Pacific Island Forum, that's one block. The Pacific Small Island Developing States, that's another block that we participate in. Things like that. But I think even outside of that, and thank you so much for bringing up this question, because my 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 paper that I'm trying to focus on for my Ocean Voices Fellowship that you mentioned is to bring out more of this Pacific story at the UN. Like we've been involved in so many key things. Not just we don't just have like important figureheads like these people, but we also have really important ideas that we've put out there. So SDG 14, if you are aware of the what we call the Sustainable Development Goals that are supposed to be achieved by 2030,
I know.
there's yeah,
We look at that at school, and I'm always like, oh, sorry. Continue, sis. I didn't mean to sigh.
no, don't worry. We sigh too. We sigh all
Yeah,
the time.
like,
SDG 14 is the SDG on oceans, and that was a Pacific call. Like that was something that when people were like, "Oh, let's talk about this," like, what are the sustainable development goals that we want? And the Pacific was like, we want one on oceans, and we want it to be, like, we want it to improve ocean health. We want to improve like ocean science. We want to clean up the ocean. We want to stop harmful fisheries subsidies, because fisheries subsidies contribute to overfishing, and for us who rely on that, like we need to have sustainable fishing, right? So that those are just some aspects of SDG 14, and to be honest, like we almost didn't get it because other countries were like, we don't. What do we? What ocean? What? Who uses the ocean? Everybody uses the ocean. Why is it important for the ocean to survive? I don't know. Maybe because it contributes to the climate system, right? Like it is the single biggest body of water on Earth, and if we're not taking care of the ocean, just as we're trying to address the climate change issue, it doesn't make sense. We need to look after like environment. We need to look after ocean. All of that will contribute to reversing the climate crisis.
Like this is so interesting, and this is another reason why I reached out to you, because I was like, I haven't really been able to connect with anyone who knows or is involved in this space. When we think about climate change, climate justice, the SDGs, the United Nations. So I'm so grateful, again, so grateful that you're sharing this important knowledge. So important. When it comes to United Nations, the elections, we fall under Asia Pacific region. Is it hard for us in those elections? The Pacific nations and obviously Asia. Like I feel like it's this. We're here. Like yeah.
No, you're definitely right. The Pacific is lumped into the Asia Pacific group. Let me just quickly check how many members, because there's a lot of. Oh, it's 53 member states, and I think there are only 12 Pacific Island nations.
So then how? I mean, while we have leaders in the space, but in terms of the elections and the importance of that, like, tell us the imbalance.
The imbalance, yeah, no, it's definitely something that we have to take into account, right? And so maybe the other thing is like elections at the UN, they're divided by the 5 regional groups. So Asia Pacific is one of them, Eastern European group, Africa group. So there's the 5 groups, and each group will get like a certain number of seats on any committee or council or whatever. And if it's Asia Pacific group, sometimes it's 2 seats, and usually that doesn't come to us. But when it's something that's super important, like if it's an ocean envoy, or if it's a committee that's supposed to discuss ocean issues, sustainable development issues, sometimes that is something that the Pacific is super interested in. And we need to work really hard when it comes to lobbying. Like we have to first work within our own region to get the buy-in from all the other Pacific states and be like, this is a thing that we think is important. Will you support, say, for example, any country, any Pacific country, will you support me if I put my name forward? Or they'll have that conversation among themselves and just be like, this is a thing that's super important to us. Is anybody like able to take on this role? We will support you if you do. And then we agree first as like a sub-region, and then we go to the Asia Pacific group. But I think something that's super important to keep in mind is capacity constraints. We have
Mm.
very small missions here. We have some missions that's literally two people, and
Wow.
they're supposed to do so much work, like not only engaging at the UN, but also feeding information back to our capital cities, and then taking on that feedback and having to balance it with the work that they do at the UN. And some of us are also what we call, we're a mission. So you're a mission to the UN, but you're also the embassy for your country in the US. So say for example, Samoa is both the embassy and the mission. So they, at the same time as
Mm.
they're doing all of this UN work, they also need to answer queries from citizens, process passports, And if we're talking about, if you have a staff of like 3 or 4 people, that easily becomes overwhelming. So even though there's this strong interest for us to engage um, on ocean issues, on climate issues, we also have to be super mindful that sometimes we just don't have the people to do it.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was curious about that because in terms of your role, like, yeah, as a technical advisor for Pacific Missions there in New York, like, yeah, what does that role entail? I mean, I know it says advisor, but then hearing what you're sharing, and I'm thinking, man, you must wear many hats.
Uh,
Like, I imagine it, or I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. Could you share a little bit about your work and yeah.
no worries. So I'm actually the oceans advisor to the Pacific Small Island Developing States chair. So the when we're talking about political blocks before, the Pacific, we're part of a couple of different blocks, but one of them is the Pacific Small Island Developing States. For short, we call it PSIDS. They negotiate as a bloc in climate and ocean. And here at the UN, what they've decided is that every year they will elect a chair for the PSIDS. So that's like a country, just one of the Pacific countries, who it's going to be their job that year to carry out this mandate, like to coordinate the PSIDS group on ocean issues or climate issues, whatever the group wants them to do. And because you're taking on this extra work, there's a recognition that you need extra resourcing. So that's where a person like me comes in. Depending on the priorities that the group has identified at the beginning of the year, they'll find some funding, find some resource support from somewhere, and then they'll put out a call for an advisor on ocean issues. Maybe next year they want to focus on like climate issues. Maybe the year after they want to focus on plastic pollution. It just depends on what the group has identified as their high priority for that year, or their high priorities. And then then the chair. So this year the chair is Palau. Then the chair will look at all of her resources and be like, we have enough money to find an advisor on ocean issues. And that's how
Mm.
someone like me comes on board. So basically, my role is to monitor all of the ocean related processes at the UN and feed back information to the chair and to the missions. Be like, this is what's coming up. Here are some points. Like, here are some areas that the Pacific is interested in. We should engage this way, or here are some areas that are under attack from others. We should probably be monitoring that, or we should start doing that, what we call bilateral work. So multilateral is when you have like multiple countries in the same room, but bilateral is when it's one-on-one. So you start
Mm.
doing bilateral outreach to countries if there's like if there's something that they're particularly concerned with. Like, we want to, as much as possible, secure things that we've fought hard for in the past. When it comes under attack, we kind of want to solve that problem before it becomes like a really big problem. So as oceans advisor, that's most of my role, is just to like look at the broad calendar. There are
Mm.
5 meetings next week on ocean issues. Like, let's get ready for those.
I'm really curious about our activists, and because I see so many of our Pacific activists out on the world stage, speaking in these forums in front of these world leaders. I mean, sis, do you get? Do you meet with? Do you ever like meet up with them? In terms of like, are you in a room doing policy things, or do you actually get the opportunities to be in the room with these amazing folks? and our Pacific leaders, all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe what like one of the beauties of the Pacific is that we are small islands. We are communities where everyone knows everyone else. So, you know, when Brianna and Sherelle come over to New York, it's very simply just a matter of being like, "Hey, we're here. Like, let's have this chat." So like connecting with each other on our community level where we all know each other. Someone else recently just came. I uh, I have like so it's just connecting with each other on that community level, but also one of the great things I think about the Pacific is that a lot of what our people want is what our governments want. We're not like major countries where people want protection of environment, they want social justice, and their governments want to serve corporations. For us, the messaging is the same. So if we have our activists in a big room talking to these world leaders advocating for very strong climate action, our leaders are going to come in and echo the same message because we're all on the same page when it comes to that. And that's the beauty, I think, of our small Pacific countries, because we all have the same concerns when it comes to protecting our people from climate change. We all have the same concerns when it comes to preserving our cultures for the future. So um, that's my experience of it, is that at my humble level, I usually connect with the activists in like just in person, but their voices are definitely well heard by our leaders.
I was thinking back to your studies in Vanuatu, and yeah, how much of that are you able to kind of put into your role?
Surprising, maybe not, but when I was in law school, I wanted to be rich, so I did a lot of commercial papers. Like I
I
was gonna be, yeah,
was
I was
like, I
gonna be
bet, yeah, she's gonna have a story. She must have a story.
I didn't do any international law courses.
Mm.
I was like, meh, I'm not interested. I don't
Yeah,
know where the money is there. So I was like, no, I'm gonna do commercial law work. And even more surprising is that when I went back to Samoa, I don't
yeah.
know where, but along the line, I developed this like bleeding heart, and I was like, I'm gonna go and be a prosecutor.
Oh my goodness.
So I was a prosecutor for 3 years, and then I moved to the civil litigation and international. Oh,
Mm.
sorry. When I moved back home to Samoa, I became a prosecutor in the Attorney General's office, and I was doing that for 3 years. And then I moved over to the civil litigation and international law side of the Attorney
Ah.
General's office. So I started doing a lot of that work, and I mean, civil litigation was also super fun, but the international law side, it was a lot of reading conventions, advising governments on how this applies, or how what if something that we're doing might not be compliant with that treaty, like here's what we need to do to make it compliant. So it's just like there's a lot of reading treaty documents and trying to understand what it meant for Samoa, like what are the things that we really like about this treaty, what do we need to think about going forward. But that was all for treaties that had already been set, like already agreed, already been established. When I started doing this gray area of international law and policy was after I left government. So I think maybe this is relatable to a lot of your audience, but if you work in the Pacific, especially if you work in the Pacific government, there's only so like we are small, right? There's only so much higher you can go until you just kind of plateau. And I don't like I don't like plateauing. I became very like I like the growth, I like the challenge, and I wasn't getting that anymore. And it's not a dig to Attorney General's office. It was just time. So I decided to move overseas and see how much I could expand. And so when I moved away from like really purely legal work into this policy side of things, is when I had to like bring some of my legal background is still relevant, but then also a lot of my experience working with government. So, understanding different ministries, understanding their different priorities. Like, I think a lot of just maybe people skills as well, right? Is like learning about what people really want, what governments really want, and how to bring all of that together into a piece of advice that you can then provide to your current clients, and just be like, this is where I think we're going, or this is where I think where we should go.
What an interesting journey. Wow. I'm just learning so much today. Was it difficult for you to kind of move back to Samoa after being away for a few years in Vanuatu? Was it difficult to kind of like go back and then, be in the family setting and pick up work and kind of get, was that transition difficult, or were you just absolutely stoked to finally be back on home soil?
Yeah, no, I think socially, like, I definitely did miss the freedom I had in Vanuatu. I mean, don't we all, right? I did miss that, but I was definitely happy to be home. Adjusting to a workplace environment was a new experience for me, because up until this point I'd just gone to school and been at home. So learning workplace dynamics, how to navigate workplace politics, that became like super important to me. And I don't know if this comes across, but I'm not very savvy with reading with reading like situations. I'm not that good at it. So it was a struggle for me personally to get a read on different like tensions and things like that. But I got there in the end. But I guess even so, that was probably my biggest struggle when it came to joining the workplace, learning how to interact with different people at that level, and then also understanding that I'd done this degree, very super happy for myself, and then I was gaining this experience, which was now giving me what you call, it's like it's education plus experience, and then when you bring those together, and if you can integrate them really well, then you rise in the ranks type of thing. And it was just being confident in myself that the education that I had, that the experience I was getting, that the skills that I was really crafting and perfecting, that they were worthy of recognition, right? I think as a young woman, it's quite often easy to be like, oh, I don't deserve this, or not put your hand up for opportunities. So, and I still struggle with it today, to be honest. But it is something that working really hard has given me that confidence to put myself forward for different things. I don't do it all the time, but when it's an opportunity that I think is particularly useful to me, or if it's an opportunity that I think where I can contribute a lot to this space, then I will always try and take it.
That's life. You live, you learn, you evolve, you learn some more. You're Samoan, you're Samoan, but you're also part German. You have, Chinese as well. And I was wondering, when you're out there, out in the world, do people often ask you like, what are you and where you're from? I hate those questions, but I was wondering, do you get that a lot?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So I think the it term that the Americans have coined is ethnically ambiguous. So I present as a lot of different ethnicities, which I don't support. Right? I was like, no, I'm Samoan, and I'm only Samoan. But especially here, I guess in New York on the East Coast, it's very rare to see a Pacific Islander. We're not very known, so I usually get confused for either Asian or Hispanic. And it's like, I don't so much care if like someone sees me on the street and they're like, oh, where are you from? Because they think I'm Hispanic and probably they might know me, but I don't care so much if we have that conversation and they're like, oh, you're Samoan, great. It only becomes a real problem to me when I think maybe like all of us is when they try and then start applying the stereotypes to me, right? It's like, oh, you're always late, or overweight, or you're supposed to be like, aren't you supposed to be huge? And I'm like, not really. I'm Samoan, I guess. Like I look the way I look, and yeah. So I do struggle with that a little bit, especially when it comes to negative stereotypes, which I do not endorse and do not put up with. That's kind of, I guess, the reality.
How did you studied, you went home, you worked for a couple of years, and then what led you overseas again? Was it more opportunities? Were you taking taking just time for yourself, traveling? Yeah.
Yeah, so something in the middle of those, right? I realized I had kind of hit the plateau for my career in Samoa at that point, and also like I'd never taken a gap year, so I guess it was it was just one of those, like the stars aligned perfectly for me, just to take a year off and try and do other things, and so I did that. Uh, and of course, it was not easy going. I thought that it would be so fun, like, oh, there will be jobs. No, no jobs. Not fun. Very stressful. And so that was 2019. And so at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, I was trying to go home again because my visas had all expired, and like I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back home and find another steady job. And then measles in Samoa happened, and the borders were closed. And so I was like, okay, I'll just hop over because I have a US passport. So I was like, I'll just go to the US for a little bit, hang out there until borders in Samoa open. And this was late February, and then everywhere closed.
Oh yeah, did they close the borders, huh?
Yeah. And then it was like, even if I wanted to leave America, I couldn't. I had to stay in America. And Samoa was definitely closed, and like all of the what you call the transit ports. Australia was closed. New Zealand was closed. It was like there's nowhere I could go anyway, even if I wanted to go, or even if I had the opportunity to leave. And of course, at that time, early 2020 in America was a very strange place. Very, the civil tensions, like the Black Lives Matter, all of those things were happening. And I was living with my family and my uncle and his family in Texas, in rural Texas. It was really hard for all of us, right? Like there was this anxiety because we were all locked, like there was this tension because we were all locked indoors every day, all day. And then there was also this anxiety because of everything that was happening around us, and the uncertainty that came from COVID. It was definitely a difficult time. But out of that came this other issue, which was like I was now running out of money and I needed to get a job, but I couldn't work in Texas because I was living with two family members who were immunocompromised, and
okay.
yeah, and so I couldn't work. And we had this as a family. We sat down and we had this conversation. It's like I guess the same thing I've always done throughout my life. It's like I want to contribute to this family. I don't want to like suck the resources out of it. So I would like to work, but I understand that that's not possible. So let's talk about alternatives. And I had a friend living in New York who was also working as an advisor to. Oh no, he hadn't been working as an advisor to a mission. He was working as an advisor for the High Seas Alliance, which is a civil society group. And he was like, "Come to New York. We'll find something. We'll make it happen." So I did, because I couldn't support myself in Texas, and I was like, at least New York is New York, right? You can do any job. So I did come here to New York in the middle of COVID, and just hustled my way to financial security.
Man, New York before had you been to New York before?
No.
So did you already have in your mind a whole list of things? You're like, here's my bucket list. Even though things are closed down, I am going to tick this off and do this. Did you already have that going on, or no? You were freaking out.
I was freaking out. Yeah, to be completely honest, I was just like, get to New York, figure it out from there. And yeah,
you're so brave.
And started figuring. I mean,
courageous.
There's a thing, right? It's like necessity makes like innovators out of all of us or something like that. There's a saying that I always think about but can never remember when I need to remember it. But it's that part of us that's like the super resilient part of us as Pacific Islanders, that we're like, this is just a thing that you have to do. Go do it. Right. So when I came to New York, I mean, definitely, bright lights, big city was like, oh my gosh, here I am. But at the same time, I was like, you first thing you need, find a job, find a place to stay, get health insurance. Oh my God, that was the most stressful thing ever. Finding health insurance in this country is so, well, 0 out of 10. Do not recommend coming here for healthcare. And I guess maybe and then after that, all of the, I guess what you call the non-essential started falling into place. Find a good support circle, make some friends, go see the Statue of Liberty. Like those were definitely, like, much lower on the list.
Man, what about the food and not related to your job, but in general, living in New York, what has your experience been like thus far?
Amazing, honestly. Like the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Like New York, it's you use online, it's always glamorous, like there's always so many things happening, it's always like sparkly. On the ground, it's filthy. It is filthy. But you know what? I don't care. Like it feels really real to me. Like I would rather live I've said this before, New York or nowhere for me. Unless it's the Pacific, then definitely the Pacific is much higher on my I wish to live there list. But for America, yeah, New York or nowhere. I feel like people here are they come off as like rough and rude, but they're not. They're like, if someone's standing in line, I guess people are just like, they're just trying to get through their day. They actually are not trying to cause trouble. Lots of people are just hanging out. Everybody's just like, all of us are all on the train together, making our way to work, making our way. It just feels real.
What's the food like?
Oh God, the food here is amazing. you can get food, like you can get any type of food here. My favorite is, of course, Mexican. Yeah. So the tacos, the birria, anywhere. The other thing is, if you are in New York, what you really need to do, like the quintessential New York thing, is of course bagels. You need to get a good bagel spot. You need to get yourself an everything bagel, or just a BEC, which is a bacon, egg, and cheese. Like, order like the locals. Show off, like, make everyone think you're from here. But so bagels are big. Nemexican food, amazing. Singaporean food, they just opened up a Singaporean food court near Times Square, I think, and it's got like vendors from the Singapore who operate like little carts. They have stores here, like, and I think Singapore is the only place where like you can have your food stand and that has a Michelin star. So those people are here now, just to promote that culture, and blown away. Love it. Any food in New York, honestly, any food in New York. And I cannot forget soul food. So I live in Harlem, and I'm very, very close to the soul food places and the Caribbean places. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, there's lots of food here. It's really good. I'm so sorry that this is...
You're getting all dreamy now. I can see it. Focus, sis. Focus. Oh, it sounds great.
After this, I'm just going to be like, hey, tap my flatmate and be like, hey, guys, you guys want to go to dinner?
Is housing and things, you mentioned the move, you needed to get a job, stable income, but then, looking for housing, was that a okay experience for you, or was it just really a headache?
Oh, it was a headache. So I'd never lived in the US before, and I didn't know all of these weird rules that they have, but you need a credit score for everything. You need like and I even till now, I really don't know how it works. I just know that I have one, and like you have to submit it to landlords. And apparently when people check your credit score, your credit score goes down. And I'm like, they're just checking it because everyone needs, like, why is it going down?
It sounds, wow.
It's harsh. So for the first 2 years when I was here, so I lived with friends for like 6 months, and then I moved out and I sublet an apartment. I was paying 800 a month for a bedroom for my
Wow.
bedroom, and I was sharing, and the apartment was shared with 4 other people, and we had no common living space. We just had the kitchen and then the bathroom, and I was like, whoa. So I lived there for a year, and it was okay. It wasn't like, horrifying, but it was very cramped. And yeah, it took me about 2 years to build up a good enough credit score to get a place, which I now have a place. And
Congrats, sis.
yeah.
Congrats.
But yeah, definitely so many weird rules in the US that you wouldn't know, because I think in other places, like, you provide like your pay slip, and then your like an employment confirmation to let your landlord know that A, you're employed, and B, like, this is how much you make, so that you can afford to pay the rent. And so having a credit score was super weird. And also, to get a credit score, you need to get credit. Like, you need to apply for a credit card. And I will tell you this: when I still had no job, I applied for a credit card, and I got a credit card for like 2K, like with a $2,000 spending limit. I was like, this is insane.
They're testing you.
Girl, I was so scared of that thing. I never
Yeah.
used it because I was like so freaked out all the time. I was like, why would you? I told you I'm not employed. Why would you give me a credit card with that much money? Why?
Because they want you to get into debt.
It's a trap. Everything is a trap.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, what do you miss from home? Like, you've been out there, you're doing your thing, living life, adulting, all that good stuff, learning. What do you miss?
I miss everything about home. I miss the ease of doing things. I miss fresh bread, sis.
Oh, I know.
I miss
I tell you, no one does fresh bread like Samoa. Like, that's my thing, eh? That's, yeah, for real.
I miss fresh bread. I miss family. I miss like having those spaces, like, Saturday evening, Sunday evening, go have tea with your uncles and your aunties, and just talk about nothing, talk about everything. I miss how easy it is just to live at home. Like, at home, if I lost my job, I mean, it would definitely be hard, but I would not die. In this country, yeah, you cannot be unemployed. You really cannot be unemployed. Everything depends on the money that you're making. And so I miss that freedom, I guess, that freedom to exist at home, which I definitely took for granted.
You spoke, touched upon it a bit earlier about the Ocean Voices program, and what do how long is that? For how long are you going to be part of? I know you're part of the inaugural cohort for that. How did you apply, or was it through work, or are you always seeking out these types of opportunities to kind of grow and learn, because that then helps you directly with the work that you're doing related to the UN?
I mean, I'm always passionate about finding spaces where I can like connect with other SIDS practitioners. So SIDS is Small Island Developing States. So SIDS ocean practitioners, I'm always trying to find spaces where I can interact with them, where I can learn with them, learn from them. But I'd never really thought about a fellowship or anything like that. And actually, at the beginning of this year, one of my big things was that I need to get on to higher education, because I still only have a bachelor's degree, and in many ways that's quite limiting when you're trying to work long term here at the UN or long term with local missions. So having having an advanced degree is probably really good, but I've been out of the academic space for so long, and so maybe I was trying to look for something that could help me reintegrate into that mind frame, because academia and practice is not the same. And there's a lot of academic skills like paper writing, research not so much, but like writing papers, giving talks, like that type of thing, which I'm not super skilled at. And so I started talking to some people, like, this is what I'm interested in doing. And one of them was like, oh, the Ocean Voices Fellowship just put out a call. You can send in your CV and your application letter. I need to check what the website is, but I'll definitely send that to you. Like, I think it is such a useful platform, because one of the things that I personally think someone from the Pacific, someone who's worked really hard but had never had these opportunities before, is because either they're targeted towards people who live here in the US and not in the Pacific, or they're targeted towards a much younger group of people. And if you think about those two things, like, if you live at home, and if someone tells you, it's like, oh, you can take part in this fellowship, but you need to pay for yourself to go to the States, it's like, that's a big ticket. That's a lot. That's a long visa process. Maybe not. And then if you also think about age, a lot of us go from primary, secondary, university, job, and there's no this. And when we're in those first 5 years of your job, like, that's super important for you to stay there and stay present, so you don't have time to apply for these or to take advantage of these external opportunities. And once you do have time, you're too old for them, right? So that's why I personally think that this Ocean Voices Fellowship is super good. So I know that I'm in the US and I got it, but I have a fellow, her name is Alumita. She's amazing. She's based in Fiji and she's got it too. So I like Ocean Voices Fellowship because it's effective for the Pacific. It's effective for SIDS practitioners. Like, it's not so tight and rigid. Like, you don't have to be a student at a university. You don't have to be based in a specific place. You can be wherever you are, and they provide the flexibility to meet your needs. Like, in the beginning of the year, I had a massive conversation with my fellowship coordinators. Like, these are the things I want out of this program, and identified a learning plan that's very much tailored to the things that I need in order to start looking into further education and academia. But yeah, but
Yeah,
huge plug. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. If someone, for young folks or just anyone who's wanting to kind of get into these spaces, career-wise, or even work for the UN, or be involved in like what you're doing, what would they need? Like, what degree would they need? What training would they need?
Well, so maybe for the UN specifically, one of the easiest ways to get in there as a young early career professional is to take advantage of what they call the Young Professionals Program, the UN Young Professionals Program. That's where they target entry-level professionals from countries that are underrepresented at the UN. So all of the Pacific is on that list. All of us are on that list. And so when we put in applications, for this particular program, it's trying to prioritize us and other underrepresented countries. I think the minimum requirement for that is just like a bachelor's degree and a couple years experience, but it is tailored for early career, so you don't need to worry about having like 5 years or something like that. That's definitely not the requirement. If you want, getting into ocean policy spaces like this is also quite difficult. I would say if you are interested in international relations, like, definitely do, of course, your bachelor's degree, and then apply for work at your foreign affairs ministry. That's an easy way. I mean, of course, you have to get in and all of that, and you have to work really hard, but apply there. I would also say look into our regional organizations. So in the Pacific, and I'm sorry, I don't have any experience in New Zealand, so I can't really speak to that. But in the Pacific, we have our regional organizations. So we have the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, we have the SPC, we have SPREP, all of these regional bodies that are based in our countries. And I think if you want to break into that international climate, international oceans type of space, those are definitely places where you should look first. On New Zealand, though, I will say they have the New Zealand mission here in New York has a what you call a junior associate program, which is really really good. They offer a paid internship for young professionals. I did that for 6 months. That's actually how I got like my major start in the UN. And they have a rolling application. I mean, they accept applications on a rolling basis, and I think that they're open now. If that's something that you're interested in, Rosa, I'll definitely send you the link. I've got it on my LinkedIn. Mhm.
I want to talk just real briefly about social media and advocacy when it comes to climate justice and climate change. And we're seeing, these conferences taking place, things at the policy level, right? But for those of us at the grassroots level, who are not involved in that, how can we advocate? How can we be part of the advocacy for climate justice and for the Pacific, for our oceans, for sustainability, and for our people? Like, what can we do at the grassroots level to raise that awareness?
I mean, honestly, just like conversations like this is super important where you get a glimpse into the work that we do, and then you have a better idea of how to engage with the work that we do. Other ways are definitely getting in contact with your local groups at home who are doing this work, because a lot of them will already have contacts with either the regional organizations or with governments, and they have that more direct space. I do a lot of time though. I think I feel you, which is I feel your point on they're just what we do at the UN level. It might maybe it feels so like unclear or it feels so opaque. So I think one of the easiest ways is to early engage with your ministries for foreign affairs. Just write letters, like be super visible in your own community, right? And then from there you get noticed by your local media, your newspapers, your journalists, and then from there you have more of a direct impact. Like the thing, people start listening to you when you start doing that kind of work, right? Your voice has meaning, your voice has what value, right? And so when you're active in that space, things you say will reach the ears that they need to reach.
So for everyone listening, if you're watching, Gemma has mentioned so many valuable connections, some, opportunities throughout this podcast. So check the bio. I'm going to compile a list and it should be there in the bio. Check it out. You can follow Gemma. There are so many people like her working hard in these spaces. So if you're curious, if you just, you know, want to be a better advocate and be part of this journey, check the bio and get connected and start networking. Self-care, I mean, outside of your work, I really hope that, with the busyness of life and your career, how do you look after yourself, sis? Like, are you intentional with making time for you, or is that struggle city?
Oh, I mean, during busy times, like during negotiation periods, it's definitely struggle city. You have to you put all of that on the side and you do the job. But then when that's done, I think there's a lot of I really appreciate my current employer because there's a lot of understanding there that after a big negotiation, like the ones that we've just finished, you need some time off, and they're very so long as your work is taken care of. It's like just take a couple of days, work from home, like with you're still working, but there's less pressure to do other things. um, I'm also planning a trip home to Samoa, and I cannot
Oh,
wait to go away,
nice.
just sit in my house and have my mom like just be
Oh,
there. That's a recharge for me, and hopefully I can get to do that very soon.
that is very, very, that's really cool to hear. That's nice. And then what other things you'd like to do just to, take care of yourself? Um, yeah.
Like food. Food is a big part of it. Food with
Have
friends.
to.
Have to, yeah, yeah. And I also like so food with friends is a really big thing in New York. There's a big foodie culture, great food scene. Um, but I also like to do hobbies. So I have a lot of like creative energy, and
Mm.
I can't pour it all into work, right? It's just it's not the right shape for my energy. So I like to do other random things. Like I like to crochet, I like to
Mm.
sew. Um, and I'm not really good at any of it, but it's fulfilling to me to just be able to do something,
Mm.
not because I need to be super good at it, but
Mm.
because it just makes me happy.
Yes, that's what's up right there. Very important. Do things that make you happy. You don't have to be a go-getter all the time. Peace of mind and energy, all of that. Your wellness, very important. Book recommendations, sis. Do you have any recommendations for us?
Yes. So one of the recent books, uh, I'm pretty sure you already know this one, The Sun and Her Flowers. Where am I?
Oh, I really like the cover,
Ruby.
eh?
Oh, it's Ruby Kaur. Kaur?
Mm,
I'm ashamed. I don't know. I did not look up how to say her name before
it's
this.
okay. We're
But yes, so
okay.
this is, yeah, it's a book of poems. It's a
Mm.
poetry book. Oh, also, Audrey Brown.
Yes, I know she's got this new.
Yeah.
I haven't. I've already got my post ready to go for this week to put her on blast. I
Her
saw
work.
that.
Yeah.
I'm
So Audrey's a really
excited.
great poet. Audrey's a really great poet, and she's active in this climate space. So
Mm,
she be doing the thing. you know.
yes.
Yeah, so Audrey's work is really good. Of course, the VAR series, the
Mm,
anthology. I've just finished reading that. I love Pacific Island work.
mm,
Albert Went, Leaves of the Banyan Tree. Such a
mm.
serious and heartbreaking, but
Yeah.
I think important book
Yep.
for someone to read, right? Mhm.
Mm.
But yes, and then of course on the fantasy side, girl, like Sarah J. Maas all the way. That's what I'm currently like working through, and I'm really into like just the fire breathing. Like, let's do it. Yep.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But do you think you'd ever you love poetry. Would you ever write? I mean, do you write poetry or is it something you're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I do write, but I find like big feelings, right? Like I write when I have big feelings, when I'm trying to navigate my big feelings are. And
Mm.
those are moments when I write. So I find I do write. It's very personal, so I don't it's not really for anyone. It's mostly just how I process emotions.
Mm. If a book was written about you, sis, what would it be called?
Um um it would be some like crazy title like I think I think I can do anything.
Okay, okay. But you just reminded me now. I forgot to ask. You're a Spice Girl stan. I mentioned it and I was like, I didn't even give you an opportunity to respond. Respond, sis. Tell me.
Oh, come on. Like, this was like the early 2000s, late 90s. Like, this was this girl power band with like, the catchiest tunes. And if you have, you had your group of girl cousins, everyone was a Spice, right? Yeah. I think for some reason I was often Posh Spice.
Yeah, I was about to ask, who are you?
I often got Posh Spice or Scary Spice. But, like,
Really?
I'm down. Like, energy, right? Energy forever.
You heard
Um,
it here
my
first, folks. You heard it here first.
Yep. My favorite song at karaoke is Wannabe.
Oh.
I'll tear that song up.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I didn't even know where to start this. As we begin to wrap up this podcast, I know when I reached out to you, you were really at a point where you were like, I do want to share a story, but what can I bring to this? And I'm so like, I'm really, really glad that you came, that you turned up today. And I just want to say thank you because you are a support. You always support me with the podcast. You've always offering some encouragement or kind words, and I love following your stories and seeing what you're doing out there, not just in the policy space and with all the hard work that you're doing at the UN, but just generally like to see how you advocate for other important issues, social justice issues, online. Um, I know you don't back down for anything. And so I love that. I love that. And yeah, I am excited to, continue to follow your journey and seeing what other amazing things you're doing out there. Um, I want to wish you all the best. It's April. Can you believe it? It's April already.
Woohoo!
Look after yourself out there in New York. Yeah, just thank you so, so much for being courageous and coming and sharing this just really important knowledge that I think many of us, like you said, we see the policy stuff. It can be quite overwhelming, but you've shared some things that said, hey, at the grassroots level, this is what you can do to really support the work that's being done for our oceans, for Pacific, for climate justice. So that was a very long spiel, but I'm grateful for you. I appreciate you, sis, and thank you. And I'll, hand it over to you to just wrap up our show and some final words of wisdom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so, so much, Rosa. And I truly appreciate that you reached out. And, I feel like the stars were aligned. This was something I do want to tell a story. Like I said before, I do have trouble putting myself up for opportunities, but when it's something that I think that I can be super valuable to, I will definitely take it. And I've seen your platform. I've seen the work that you do. I think it's so valuable for us to have spaces where we just hear from more of our own, right? Hearing these very human stories about struggle, about life, about profession, it helps us. I think it helps reach out to other people who look just like us and be like, you're not alone, or you can be here too. I think if there's anything that I would really like to leave this conversation with is that find your purpose, find your passion, and don't tie it down to any specific job, don't tie it down to any specific location, right? Be always open to growing. Like, I think if you stay true to your passion and your core values, you can go really far. You can plant yourself anywhere. You can plant yourself in Japan, you can plant yourself in New York, and you can grow and you can thrive there. And yeah, if anyone wants to come visit me in New York, please do. I always love seeing more Pacific Islanders around here, just hanging out and having good food.
Good food, fam. Good food. We're down for that.
Great food. Great food.
Great food.